The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the gallery's main hall. Crystal fragments scattered like my world had just done, each piece reflecting the horrified faces of our social circle who'd witnessed what just happened. My wife laughed and said, "Spend one day with him, you'll understand my misery." Her stunning sister smirked and said, "I have, many times, and I liked it." The room went silent. I didn't know what to do. That's how I'd tell the story later, but in that moment, standing there like an idiot in my best suit, watching Lydia's perfectly manicured hand cover her mouth in mock surprise while Maren's green eyes danced with malicious glee, I felt something fade inside me. Not love, that had been on life support for months. What faded was my ability to pretend everything was fine. My name is Brooks Mitchell. I'm 32, an architect who designs buildings that last longer than most marriages, apparently including my own. I should have seen this coming. The signs were there, written in late-night sister bonding sessions, mysterious text messages, and Lydia's sudden interest in photography. Maren's profession. The Whitmore Gallery's annual charity gala was supposed to be Lydia's crowning achievement. As the gallery's owner, she'd spent months orchestrating this event, calling in favors from her wealthy family connections, schmoozing with artists and collectors. The converted warehouse space buzzed with the city's cultural elite, their voices echoing off exposed brick walls and industrial lighting fixtures I'd helped design 2 years ago, back when Lydia still pretended to value my opinion. "Brooks, darling, you look like you've seen a ghost," said Margaret Thornfield, one of the gallery's board members, her voice dripping with the kind of false concern that rich women perfect over decades of charity luncheons. I stood there, surrounded by abstract paintings that probably cost more than my annual salary, watching my wife of 4 years and her sister exchange a look that confirmed every suspicion I'd been too naive to voice. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career creating structures built to withstand storms, yet I'd failed to notice the foundation of my own life crumbling beneath my feet. "Just processing some unexpected architecture," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. Years of client presentations had taught me to maintain composure under pressure, though I'd never imagined needing that skill to survive my personal life imploding in public. Lydia, stunning in her black designer dress that cost more than most people's rent, glided toward me with the practiced grace of someone who'd been performing for an audience since birth. Her blonde hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, revealing the diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary, apparently while she was already sharing intimate moments with her own sister. "Brooks, honey, you're being dramatic," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when addressing what she considered my emotional outbursts. "Maren was just joking around. You know how she is?" But Maren wasn't backing down. At 29, she possessed a wild beauty that contrasted sharply with Lydia's polished perfection. Where Lydia was all careful angles and calculated charm, Maren radiated raw authenticity that had always made me slightly uncomfortable. Now I understood why. "Was I joking, Lydia?" Maren asked, her voice cutting through the ambient chatter of the gala like a blade. "Because I remember being very serious about enjoying my time with your husband, especially last Thursday afternoon, and that weekend you went to visit Mom and—" "Maren, stop." Lydia's composure cracked just enough for me to see the panic underneath. The circle of socialites around us had grown larger, drawn by the scent of scandal like sharks. I recognized faces from the country club, fellow gallery patrons, artists whose work hung on these walls, all of them watching my humiliation unfold with the kind of fascination people reserve for car accidents and reality television. "You know what the funniest part is?" I heard myself say, surprising everyone, including myself. "I actually thought I was losing my mind. The way you'd know things about my day that I'd only told Lydia. The way you'd finish my sentences. The way you always seemed to understand my references to conversations I thought I'd only had with my wife." The room had gone completely silent now. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, sensing the electric tension crackling through the air. "Brooks, please," Lydia whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She knew the game was over. "How long?" I asked, looking directly at Maren. "How long have you two been playing musical chairs with my life?" Maren's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Long enough to know which one of us you actually prefer in bed?" That's when Lydia slapped her. The sound echoed through the gallery like a gunshot, and suddenly everyone was moving at once. Margaret Thornfield gasped audibly. Someone's wine glass hit the floor. I heard the rapid-fire clicking of phone cameras capturing what would undoubtedly become the social media scandal of the season. But I just stood there, watching the two women who had systematically destroyed my ability to trust my own perceptions, and felt something unexpected wash over me. Relief. Pure, clean relief that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts hadn't been wrong, that the subtle wrongness I'd felt for months had a name and a face. 2 faces, actually. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, raising my voice to address the entire room, "I'd like to thank you all for attending this evening's exhibition. The featured installation, titled How to Destroy Your Husband's Sanity Through Elaborate Deception, has been a collaborative effort between the gallery owner and her sister. I hope you've enjoyed the performance as much as I have." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the erupting chaos of voices, the flash of cameras, and the sound of my wife calling my name. But I didn't look back. I had work to do. The next morning, I sat in my downtown office, staring at blueprints for a new residential complex while my phone buzzed with increasingly frantic messages from Lydia. Outside my window, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, completely indifferent to the fact that my world had been turned upside down less than 12 hours ago. My assistant, Jennifer, knocked on my door frame. "Brooks, there's a woman here to see you. Says she's your sister-in-law?" I looked up to find Maren standing behind Jennifer, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd participated in the previous night's public meltdown. She wore dark jeans and a leather jacket, her red hair loose around her shoulders, holding a manila envelope in her hands. "It's fine, Jen. Come in, Maren. Let's finish what we started." Jennifer retreated, closing the door behind her. Maren walked to the chair across from my desk, her movements fluid and confident. Even now, knowing what I knew, I had to admit she was striking. No wonder I'd been confused. "You handled that well last night," she said, settling into the chair. "Very dramatic. Lydia's been crying all morning." "I assume you're here to gloat?" "Actually, I'm here to give you this." She placed the envelope on my desk. "Consider it a parting gift." I stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "What is it?" "Evidence, timestamps, photos, hotel receipts, text messages, everything you need to understand exactly how long and how thoroughly we've been playing with your head." My stomach clenched. "Why?" "Because the game's over, and you deserve to know the score." She leaned back in her chair, studying me with those unsettling green eyes. "Besides, Lydia's convinced herself that you'll forgive her if she just cries pretty enough. She doesn't understand that some things can't be undone." I picked up the envelope, weighing it in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, dense with the weight of betrayal documented in meticulous detail. "How long, Maren?" 2 years. Maybe longer. It started as a joke, really. Lydia was complaining about how boring you were, how predictable. She said you probably wouldn't even notice if someone else showed up in her place, so we tested it. You tested it. First time was at the Morrisons' dinner party. Remember? Lydia had that migraine, but she showed up anyway? Except it wasn't Lydia. It was me. You spent the entire evening talking to me about your latest project, holding my hand, kissing me goodnight. You never suspected a thing. The memory came flooding back. I remembered thinking Lydia had seemed different that night, more engaged, more interested in my work. She'd asked thoughtful questions about the structural challenges I was facing, listened without checking her phone. I'd gone home feeling closer to my wife than I had in months. After that, it became a regular thing. Whenever Lydia wanted a night off from being Mrs. Brooks Mitchell, she'd call me. Gallery openings, dinner parties, even some of your work functions. I probably know your colleagues better than she does. I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs. The first one showed Maren at my company's Christmas party, wearing Lydia's blue dress, laughing at something my partner Dave was saying. I remembered that night. I remembered thinking my wife looked beautiful, radiant even. I remembered taking her home and making love to her with more passion than we'd shared in years, except it hadn't been my wife. Jesus Christ, Maren. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. She gestured to the photos. Keep looking. The next image was a hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown, dated 3 months ago. The weekend Lydia had supposedly gone to visit her mother in Boston, except according to the receipt, she'd been 20 minutes from our house, registered under an assumed name. That was my idea, Maren said, watching my face carefully. I suggested she tell you she was going out of town, then spend the weekend with James Patterson. You remember James, the sculptor whose work she's been promoting. Anyway, while she was playing house with him, I played house with you. We ordered Chinese food, watched those terrible action movies you love, spent Sunday morning in bed. You told me it was the best weekend you'd had in years. I remembered that weekend vividly. I'd been amazed by Lydia's sudden interest in my movie preferences, her willingness to stay in bed late on Sunday, the way she'd seemed genuinely present instead of constantly checking her social media. It had given me hope for our marriage. You're sick, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. The truth was, I was beginning to understand the full scope of what they'd done, and it was worse than simple infidelity. They'd weaponized my love, turned my own emotions into a tool for their entertainment. Maybe. But you have to admit, it was brilliant in its own way. Lydia got to have her affairs without the guilt of lying to your face, and I got to experience what it would be like to be married to someone who actually paid attention. Win-win. Except for me. You seemed happy enough. Happier than you'd been in years, according to Lydia. Turns out you didn't want a different wife. You wanted the same wife, just better. More engaged, more present, more like me. I flipped through more photos, each one a memory I'd treasured, now revealed as an elaborate deception. Maren at my birthday dinner, Maren at the office holiday party, Maren in our bed, in our home, living pieces of my life while my actual wife pursued her own interests elsewhere. The real question, Maren continued, is what you're going to do about it now that you know. I looked up at her, this woman who'd systematically infiltrated my marriage, my memories, my most intimate moments. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think you should thank us. When was the last time you felt truly connected to Lydia? The real Lydia. Because I guarantee you every good memory you have from the past 2 years, that was me. She stood up, smoothing down her jacket. The rest of the evidence is in there. Bank statements, credit card receipts, even some audio recordings. Lydia's not as careful about operational security as she thinks she is. Why are you giving me this? Maren paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Because Lydia thinks she can manipulate her way out of this. She's planning to blame everything on me, paint herself as the victim of her manipulative sister's schemes. She's going to tell you I seduced her into it, that she was just trying to protect you from the truth about my obsession with you. And you want to get your version on the record first. I want you to understand that this was always a partnership. Lydia wasn't some innocent victim. She was an active, enthusiastic participant who got exactly what she wanted. Freedom to pursue other relationships while maintaining the social status of being married to a successful architect. After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the evidence spread across my desk. Photos, receipts, printed text messages, even what appeared to be a detailed spreadsheet tracking which sister had attended which events. They'd turned my life into a project, complete with documentation and performance metrics. My phone rang. Lydia's name appeared on the screen. "Brooks, honey, please come home. We need to talk." "I'm sure we do." "Maren told me she came to see you. Whatever she said, whatever she showed you, you have to understand. She's been manipulating both of us. She's obsessed with you, Brooks. She has been for years. She convinced me that this was all just harmless fun, but I see now how sick it really was." I almost laughed. Maren had predicted this conversation word for word. "Come home, Brooks. Let me explain everything. Let me make this right." "I'll be home tonight, Lydia. We'll definitely talk." But first, I had some research to do. By evening, I'd made several important discoveries. The most significant was that our social circle had been in on the joke far longer than I'd realized. What I'd interpreted as admiration for my wife's sudden personality improvements over the past 2 years had actually been amusement at my inability to tell the difference between two women I should have known intimately. I arrived home to find Lydia waiting in our living room, still wearing the black dress from the previous night's gala. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her usually perfect hair disheveled. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy that had kept me in this marriage long past its expiration date. "Brooks, thank God you're home. I've been going crazy thinking about what Maren might have told you." Our house was a testament to Lydia's taste and her family's money. All clean lines, expensive furniture, and carefully curated art pieces. I'd designed the renovation myself, creating an open concept space that was supposed to bring us closer together. Instead, it had just given us more room to drift apart. "She gave me quite a comprehensive briefing," I said, setting my briefcase down by the door. "Very thorough documentation. You both have excellent organizational skills." "Brooks, please sit down. Let me explain." I remained standing. "I'm listening." "Maren has been obsessed with you since the day we got married. She's always been jealous of what I have, what our family has. When she suggested this game, I thought it was just her way of getting attention. I never imagined she'd take it so far." "How far did she take it, Lydia?" "She convinced me that you wouldn't notice if we switched places occasionally. She said it would be funny, harmless, but then she started pushing for more, longer periods, more intimate situations. She wanted to know what it felt like to be me, to have my life." I watched my wife perform, recognizing the calculated tears, the strategic vulnerability. She'd always been good at this, turning her mistakes into evidence of other people's failures. "So you're saying you were manipulated into a 2-year deception that involved detailed planning, fake hotel registrations, and coordinated scheduling?" She made it sound so innocent at first. just a silly prank between sisters. But then it became this elaborate thing, and I didn't know how to stop it without destroying our marriage. Destroying our marriage. Yes, I was trying to protect us, Brooks. I knew if you found out, you'd be devastated. So I went along with it, hoping it would just end naturally. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a text message I'd screenshot from Maren's evidence package. Is that why you texted her last month saying, B is getting suspicious about the gallery opening? Maybe we should take a break? Because you were trying to protect our marriage? Lydia's face went white. She showed you our private messages? She showed me everything, Lydia, the whole operation, including your text from 2 weeks ago. This is the best of both worlds. I get my freedom, you get your fantasy, and Brooks gets a wife who actually pays attention to him. Everybody wins. The tears stopped. Just like that, the performance ended, and I saw my wife's true face. Calculating, cold, completely unrepentant. Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. You were boring, Brooks. Predictable. You came home every day with the same stories about the same people, wanting to discuss the same things. You never surprised me, never challenged me, never made me feel like I was married to someone exciting. So you replaced yourself with your sister. I gave you an improved version of me, and you loved it. You were happier these past 2 years than you'd been since we got married. So don't stand there acting like you're the victim when you got exactly what you wanted. A wife who hung on your every word and actually enjoyed your company. My phone buzzed with a text message, then another. Then my phone started ringing. Brooks, you need to see this. It was Dave, my business partner. Turn on Channel 7. Now. I grabbed the remote and turned on the television. The local news was running a story about the previous night's gala, complete with cell phone footage of the confrontation. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the follow-up interviews they'd conducted throughout the day. We always thought it was funny how Lydia's personality seemed to change from event to event, Margaret Thornfield was saying to the reporter. Sometimes she'd be so engaged and charming. Other times she seemed completely disinterested. Now it all makes sense. The next interview was with James Patterson, the sculptor Maren had mentioned. Lydia and I have been seeing each other for about 6 months, he said, seemingly oblivious to the implications of his confession. She told me her marriage was essentially over, that they were just maintaining appearances for social reasons. I had no idea about this sister-swapping thing, but it explains why she always seemed so guilty about spending time with me. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Brooks, honey, your father and I just saw the news. Are you all right? Before I could answer, another call came in, then another. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from friends, colleagues, family members, all wanting to know if what they'd seen on television was true. You need to make this stop, Lydia said, reaching for my phone. Call them back. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding, Lydia? We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this together, but not if you keep humiliating me in public. That's when I realized she still didn't understand what she'd done. In her mind, the problem wasn't the deception, it was that I'd exposed it. She was angry at me for ruining her game, not sorry for playing it in the first place. I'm going to stay at Dave's tonight, I said, heading toward the stairs to pack a bag. Brooks, don't you dare walk away from me. We're not finished talking about this. But I was finished. I'd heard everything I needed to hear. The next morning, I met Dave for coffee at our usual spot downtown. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. Jesus, Brooks, I don't even know what to say. Sarah's been calling everyone we know, trying to piece together how long this has been going on. 2 years, apparently, maybe longer. That's insane. I mean, I always thought Lydia seemed different sometimes, but I figured marriage just changes people. You know how Sarah's different when she's around her work friends versus when she's with family. This is slightly more extreme than code switching, Dave. Yeah, no kidding. Sarah thinks she can remember specific events where it was probably Maren instead of Lydia. She's making a list. My phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Tom Bradley, a friend from college who lived across the country. Dude, you're trending on Twitter, and Zaren's sister swap is everywhere. I showed Dave the message. He whistled low. This is bigger than just local news. Apparently. What are you going to do? That was the question everyone kept asking, and I was beginning to formulate an answer. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. I'm going to find out who else knew, and then I'm going to make sure everyone understands exactly what happened here. Dave studied my face. You're planning something. I'm planning justice, Dave. There's a difference. The evidence was more damning than I'd initially realized. After 3 days of investigation, I'd discovered that our entire social circle had been aware of the deception to varying degrees. Some, like Margaret Thornfield, had simply noticed inconsistencies in Lydia's behavior. Others, like our neighbors the Hendersons, had actively participated by providing alibis when needed. But the worst betrayal came from people I'd considered my closest friends. I arranged to meet them at Murphy's Pub, our usual Thursday night hangout. The group consisted of Dave and his wife Sarah, Tom and Linda Morrison, and Mike Chen with his girlfriend Rebecca. These were people I'd known for years, people I'd trusted with my personal struggles and celebrated my successes with. They were all there when I arrived, clustered around our regular table in the back corner. The conversation stopped abruptly when they saw me, replaced by the kind of awkward silence that follows a funeral or a public humiliation. "Brooks," Sarah said carefully, "how are you holding up?" I sat down without ordering a drink. "That depends. How long have you all known?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Tom cleared his throat. "Known what, exactly?" "Don't insult my intelligence, Tom. The news coverage has been pretty comprehensive. How long have you known about the sister swap?" Mike shifted in his seat. "Look, man, we suspected something was off, but we never knew for sure until... Bullshit." I pulled out a printed email and placed it on the table. "This is from Sarah to Linda, dated 8 months ago. Subject line, Brooks situation. Quote, I'm 90% sure it was Maren at the charity auction last week. She actually laughed at Brooks's jokes and seemed interested when he talked about work. Plus, she was wearing flats. Lydia never wears flats to formal events." End quote. Sarah's face went red. "Brooks, I can explain?" "There's more." Linda's response, "We should probably say something, but honestly, he seems happier when it's Maren. Maybe we should just let it play out." Tom, your reply, "Agreed. Not our circus, not our monkeys." I looked around the table at these people I'd considered family, watching them struggle to maintain eye contact. "You all knew, you've known for months, maybe years, and you decided it was entertaining enough to let it continue." "It wasn't like that," Linda protested. "We were trying to protect you." "Protect me? By letting me live in a fantasy while my wife screwed around behind my back?" "We didn't know about the affairs," Dave said quietly. "We just thought it was some weird sister thing. We figured if you were happy, if I was happy with a lie." Rebecca, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Brooks, we talked about this so many times. We wanted to tell you, but we didn't know how. And honestly, you seemed better, more relaxed. We thought maybe Lydia was just making an effort to be more engaged in your marriage. So you decided to let me make a fool of myself indefinitely." "That's not fair," Tom said, his voice rising. "You're acting like we conspired against you. We were trying to stay out of your personal business." "My personal business? Tom, I talked to you about how proud I was that Lydia and I were reconnecting. I told you about intimate conversations I thought I was having with my wife. You let me believe I was rebuilding my marriage when you knew I was actually developing feelings for my sister-in-law." The table erupted in overlapping voices, everyone trying to justify their silence, explain their reasoning, defend their choices. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was remembering specific moments, conversations, events where these people had watched me interact with Maren thinking she was Lydia and said nothing. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, cutting through their explanations. "It's not that you knew, it's that you found it funny. Sarah, I saw your group chat with the other wives, the one where you placed bets on how long it would take me to figure it out." Sarah's mouth fell open. "How did you—" "Maren was very thorough in her documentation. Apparently you all had quite the entertainment budget riding on my obliviousness. Linda had money on 6 months, Rebecca bet on a year. Sarah, you had faith in my stupidity. You bet it would take 2 years. "Brooks, that was just... we were just..." Sarah stammered. "Just what? Just having fun at my expense? Just enjoying the show?" I stood up, pulling on my jacket. "Well, congratulations. You all won. It took exactly 2 years, 1 month, and 3 days for me to figure out that my closest friends were actively participating in the systematic destruction of my ability to trust my own perceptions." "Where are you going?" Dave asked. "To have a conversation with the gallery board. Turns out Lydia's contract has some very interesting clauses about moral turpitude and public scandals. Her family's money might have bought her the position, but it can't protect her from the consequences of her choices." "Brooks, wait," Mike called after me. "Don't do something you'll regret." I turned back to look at them one last time, these people who'd shared my life for years, who'd been guests at my wedding, who'd celebrated holidays in my home. The only thing I regret is trusting any of you. The Whitmore Gallery board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I'd spent the weekend preparing my presentation with the same meticulous attention to detail I brought to my architectural projects. The difference was that instead of designing a building, I was engineering the complete destruction of Lydia's professional life. Margaret Thornfield had agreed to meet with me privately before the board convened. Her office was in the gallery's administrative wing, or a space I'd helped design during the building's renovation. The irony of using my own architectural work as the venue for my wife's professional execution wasn't lost on me. "Brooks, I want you to know how sorry I am about all of this," Margaret said, gesturing for me to sit across from her mahogany desk. The board had no idea about the extent of Lydia's personal complications. "I appreciate that, Margaret, but I think you'll find that Lydia's personal complications have become professional liabilities." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a bound presentation folder. "I've prepared a comprehensive overview of the situation, including documentation that I believe the board will find relevant to Lydia's continued employment." Margaret accepted the folder with obvious reluctance. "Brooks, I understand you're hurt and angry, but this isn't about hurt feelings, Margaret. This is about fiduciary responsibility and public trust." She opened the folder and began reading. I watched her expression change as she processed the timeline of deception, the documented evidence of Lydia's affairs, and the financial implications of the gallery's association with the scandal. "My God," she whispered. "The hotel receipts, the credit card statements. Brooks, how did you obtain all of this?" Maren provided most of it. Apparently, she kept detailed records of their activities. I've also included statements from several gallery patrons who were aware of the deception and chose not to report it to the board. Margaret flipped to the financial analysis I'd prepared. "What am I looking at here? Projected revenue loss based on the current media coverage and social media response. The gallery's reputation depends on public trust and the perception of moral authority in the arts community. Lydia's actions have compromised that trust in a very public way." I'd spent years learning how to present complex information to decision-makers who had limited time and patience for details. The skills that had made me successful in architecture translated perfectly to destroying my wife's career. The attendance projections for upcoming exhibitions, the impact on donor relationships, the potential for additional media scrutiny, it's all documented there, along with the relevant sections of Lydia's employment contract. Margaret was reading the contract language I'd highlighted, the moral turpitude clause. Section 4.3.2, the employee agrees to maintain personal and professional conduct consistent with the gallery's reputation and mission. Behavior that brings public disgrace or scandal upon the institution may result in immediate termination without severance. "Brooks, you realize what you're asking us to do." "I'm not asking you to do anything, Margaret. I'm providing information that I believe the board has a right to possess when making decisions about the gallery's leadership." The board meeting convened at 2 o'clock. I wasn't invited to attend, but I didn't need to be there. The presentation spoke for itself, and I'd made sure every detail was unassailable. While the board deliberated, I drove across town to Maren's photography studio. I found her in her darkroom, developing prints in the red-tinted light that made everything look like a crime scene. "I wondered when you'd show up," she said without looking away from her work. "How did the board meeting go?" "Still in progress. I thought you might be interested to know that your documentation was very persuasive." "I'm sure it was. I've always been thorough in my work." I watched her move between chemical baths, manipulating images in the analog process she preferred over digital photography. The pictures emerging in the developer were portraits, intimate, revealing shots that captured something essential about her subjects. "Why did you really give me that evidence, Maren?" She finally looked at me, her green eyes unreadable in the red light. "Because Lydia was going to throw me under the bus to save herself. She always does. It's been her pattern since we were children. Maren the troublemaker, Lydia the innocent victim. So this was about sibling rivalry. This was about justice. Lydia got everything handed to her. The gallery position, the social connections, the perfect husband. She took it all for granted, treated it like a game. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose something important. And what about me? Was I just collateral damage in your sister war?" Maren turned back to her prints, but I could see her reflection in the darkroom mirror. "You were the best part of the whole thing, Brooks, the only part that felt real." My phone buzzed with a text message from Margaret Thornfield. "Board has reached a decision. Lydia's employment has been terminated effective immediately. Security is escorting her from the building." I showed the message to Maren. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Getting your revenge?" Like the end of something that should have ended a long time ago. I left Maren in her darkroom and drove home to find Lydia's car in the driveway. She was in the living room, surrounded by boxes and suitcases, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked when she saw me. "They fired me, Brooks. They actually fired me. My family built that gallery. My grandfather's donations funded the original building." "Your grandfather's donations don't excuse fraud and public scandal." "Fraud? I never committed fraud. I never stole money or—" "You stole 2 years of my life, Lydia. You stole my ability to trust my own memory, my own perceptions. You turned my marriage into performance art for your entertainment and called it love." She stood up, her designer clothes wrinkled, her perfect composure finally shattered. "You want to know the truth, Brooks? The real truth? You were happier with Maren than you ever were with me. Every good memory you have from our marriage, the conversations, the intimacy, the connection you thought we'd found, that was her. She gave you everything you wanted from me, but never got. And what did you get out of it? Freedom. The chance to be someone other than Brooks Mitchell's wife for a few hours at a time. The opportunity to explore relationships with people who found me interesting for reasons that had nothing to do with my family's money or social connections. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 4 years, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing her clearly for the first time. Not the performance she'd been giving me, not the version Maren had been providing, but the actual person underneath all the deception. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow." "On what grounds?" "I think adultery and fraud are sufficient to start with." Lydia picked up her suitcases and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. "You know, Brooks, in some twisted way, we gave you exactly what you wanted. A wife who paid attention to you, who engaged with your work, who made you feel valued and understood. The fact that it wasn't really me doesn't change how it made you feel." "It changes everything, Lydia." "Does it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you fell in love with my sister while married to me. Which one of us is really the cheater?" After she left, I sat alone in the house we'd shared, surrounded by the furniture and art and carefully curated life we'd built together. None of it felt real anymore. Every memory was suspect, every moment of happiness potentially counterfeit. My phone rang. It was Maren. "I heard about the gallery. How are you feeling?" "Like I need to burn everything down and start over." "That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes destruction is just another form of construction." "Is that supposed to be profound?" "It's supposed to be true. You're an architect, Brooks. You understand that sometimes you have to demolish a structure before you can build something better in its place." "And what exactly am I supposed to build, Maren?" "Whatever you want. For the first time in years, you get to make choices based on what you actually want instead of what you think you're supposed to want." After we hung up, I walked through the house, looking at everything with new eyes. The renovation I'd designed, the furniture Lydia had selected, the art we'd collected together, it all belonged to people who no longer existed. The Brooks who had lived here was a man who'd been systematically deceived about the nature of his own life. The Lydia who had lived here was a performance, a carefully constructed fiction. I picked up my laptop and began researching real estate listings in other cities. It was time to design a new life, one built on a foundation of truth instead of elaborate deception. But first, I had one more conversation to have. The final confrontation happened at the gallery's closing reception, an event that had been planned months in advance but now served as Lydia's unofficial funeral in the art world. I hadn't planned to attend, but something drew me there, a need to see the complete destruction of the life I'd thought I was living. The gallery was crowded with the same people who'd witnessed the original scandal, plus journalists and curiosity seekers drawn by the ongoing media coverage. Lydia stood near the back wall, isolated despite the crowd, her usual circle of admirers conspicuously absent. I found Margaret Thornfield near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and looking exhausted. "Brooks, I'm surprised to see you here." "I wanted to see how the story ends." "It's not ending well for anyone, I'm afraid. The board is in crisis mode. 3 major donors have withdrawn their support. We're looking at having to cancel the fall exhibition series." "I'm sorry to hear that." Margaret studied my face. "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got exactly what you wanted. Lydia's career is destroyed, her reputation is in ruins, and her family is considering disowning her. Mission accomplished." "This was never about destroying Lydia, Margaret. This was about truth." "Truth is expensive, Brooks. Sometimes more expensive than the lies it replaces." I left Margaret at the bar and walked through the gallery, past paintings and sculptures that represented years of careful curation and artistic vision. Whatever Lydia's personal failings, she'd been good at her job. The gallery's reputation for discovering emerging talent and presenting challenging exhibitions was well deserved, But that was before she'd turned her personal life into a public spectacle. I found Maren in the sculpture garden, photographing the reactions of guests as they encountered Lydia throughout the evening. Even now, she was documenting the aftermath of their shared destruction. Getting some good shots? The best kind, authentic human emotion, unfiltered by social pretense. She lowered her camera and looked at me. How does it feel to be back in the scene of the crime? Like visiting a museum of my former life. Any regrets? I considered the question seriously. About exposing the truth? No. About the collateral damage? Maybe. The gallery will survive. Margaret's tougher than she looks, and the art community has a short memory for scandal when the work is good enough. And Lydia? Lydia will land on her feet. She always does. Rich girls don't stay down for long. They just find new stages for their performances. A commotion near the entrance caught our attention. James Patterson, the sculptor Lydia had been seeing, was arguing loudly with someone I couldn't see clearly. Looks like not everyone got the memo about discretion, Maren observed. We moved closer to get a better view. James was confronting Tom Morrison, one of my former friends, apparently upset about something Tom had said to a reporter. You had no right to discuss my relationship with Lydia, James was saying, his voice carrying across the gallery. That was private information. Nothing about this situation is private anymore, Tom replied. You want to blame someone? Blame Brooks for turning it into a public circus. That's when I stepped forward. Actually, Tom, I think you want to blame Lydia and Maren for creating the circus in the first place. I just bought tickets to the show like everyone else. The conversation stopped. Other guests began gathering around us, sensing another dramatic moment in what had become the social event of the season. Brooks, Tom said, I think you've done enough damage for one night. Have I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the damage was done 2 years ago when my wife and her sister decided to turn my life into their personal entertainment. James stepped closer, his face flushed with anger. You destroyed a good woman's career over a personal grudge. Lydia made mistakes, but she didn't deserve this level of public humiliation. A good woman? I laughed, the sound harsh in the gallery's acoustics. James, did you know that while you were having your affair with Lydia, she was sending her sister to have dinner with me? Did you know that the woman you thought you were saving from a boring marriage was actually living a double life that would make a spy novel look simple? That's between you and her? No, it's between all of us, because everyone here participated in the deception. You, Tom, Margaret, half the people in this room, you all knew something was wrong and chose to treat it like entertainment instead of the systematic psychological abuse it actually was. The gallery had gone completely quiet. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. You want to know what Lydia deserves? I continued, my voice carrying to every corner of the space. She deserves exactly what she got, the consequences of her choices. She chose to deceive her husband for 2 years. She chose to document that deception in meticulous detail. She chose to involve her sister, her friends, her colleagues in an elaborate game designed to make me question my own sanity. And when it all came out, she chose to blame everyone except herself. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. So yes, I exposed her. Yes, I provided evidence to her employers. Yes, I made sure everyone understood exactly what happened here. Because the alternative was to let her rewrite history, to let her turn herself into the victim of her sister's manipulation, to let her escape responsibility for the systematic destruction of another person's ability to trust their own perceptions. Maren stepped forward, her camera raised. And what about me, Brooks? What do I deserve? You deserve credit for being honest about your motivations. You never pretended this was about love or protection or anything other than what it was, a game designed to see how far you could push someone before they broke. And did you break? I looked at her through the camera lens, this woman who'd lived pieces of my life, who'd shared intimate moments with me under false pretenses, who'd documented every detail of my humiliation for posterity. No, Maren. I rebuilt. The crowd began to disperse. The drama apparently concluded, but Tom Morrison wasn't finished. You're not the victim here, Brooks, he said, his voice loud enough to carry across the gallery. You're a vindictive bastard who destroyed multiple lives because your ego couldn't handle being made a fool of. My ego? Yes, your ego. Because the truth is, you were happier when you thought it was Lydia paying attention to you. You were happier living the lie than you ever were living the truth. And instead of being grateful for 2 years of feeling valued and understood, you decided to punish everyone involved for giving you exactly what you wanted. I felt something snap inside me, a tension that had been building for weeks finally reaching its breaking point. You're right, Tom. I was happier. I was happier believing that my wife had finally started caring about my work, my thoughts, my feelings. I was happier thinking that we'd found our way back to each other after years of drifting apart. I was happier living in a fantasy where the person I'd married actually gave a damn about the person I'd become. I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the sweat on his forehead. But here's the thing about happiness built on lies. It's not real. It's not sustainable. And it's not mine to keep when it was created through the systematic deception and manipulation of my reality. So yes, I chose truth over happiness. I chose facts over feelings. I chose to destroy something beautiful and false instead of preserving something ugly and real. And was it worth it? This came from Lydia, who'd been watching from across the room but was now walking toward us. Was destroying everything worth your precious truth? I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, this woman who'd shared my bed while sending her sister to share my thoughts, who'd built a career on artistic vision while living a life of calculated blindness. Ask me in a year, Lydia, when I'm living in a place you've never been, working with people who don't know your name, building something that belongs entirely to me. Ask me then if truth was worth more than the beautiful lie you created. And what if you're miserable? What if you discover that the lie was better than the reality? Then I'll be miserable honestly, which is more than I can say for the happiness you provided. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the gallery, the art, the people who'd populated my life for the past 4 years. At the door, I paused and looked back one final time. The space was beautiful. Clean lines, perfect lighting, carefully curated art that challenged and inspired. I'd helped design this place, had been proud of the way it showcased the work within its walls, but it was also the site of countless deceptions, the stage where my wife and her sister had performed their elaborate manipulation of my reality. Sometimes the most beautiful buildings have to be torn down to make room for something better. I walked out into the night air, pulled out my phone, and called the real estate agent who'd been showing me properties in Seattle. It was time to start building something new.